Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and well, we're past the spring equinox, so it's nice that the days are getting longer, but it's still kind of cold out. But I'm hoping that today's show will have kind of a spring theme. I'm joined today by Lindsey Blank, who is the chairman of the Riverside Park Conservancy.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming on. And one of the things that, other than the weather and thinking about outdoor stuff, that inspired me to do a show on Riverside Park is that it's actually been quite a while since we last did one. I think it might have been like 2014. So I thought it was important that we provide updates because some things are happening. And also, you know, we all have Facebook, and in my memories, 2 or 3 days ago, showed up from 2010, the original newspaper article from the first public hearing in March of 2010, when the Coast Guard Academy was thinking about buying a portion of the park. So
was that before council had any votes on it?
I think so, because I think Kathleen Mitchell and I went to a lot of city council meetings starting, I think, in March. And it seems as though the first few times we went, the response we were getting at city council was, nothing's on the agenda, it's too soon. So I think some of this exploratory behavior on the part of the Coast Guard Academy was before any kind of formal proposal came before council.
Yeah, I think they were just putting feelers out to see what reaction they would get from council in the city.
Yeah, and it was a pretty mixed reaction, but I figure 8 years later, and you and I both, things are much better now and we can breathe much easier, but that whole process really affected our lives a lot over the last 8 years.
Absolutely, yeah. Changed everything, really.
Now, how did you get involved with Riverside Park? You're not one of the immediate neighbors of the park.
No.
And yet, you had been one of the people who uses the park before this whole thing came up.
I got involved because of the article you're talking about, because when they started to talk about selling the park, my response was no, city shouldn't sell parks.
Yeah, and you also knew where it was before that article.
Yeah, 'cause I used to go. It was fairly close to my house, so I would go up there, and it was just, I really liked the park. Quiet, water views.
Yeah, shade.
Everything you need.
And now, were you one of the park people who brought your dogs to the park, or not so much?
Well, at the time I had 2 dogs, and one would go this way and the other one would go that way, so we only did that a couple times.
The reason I was thinking that, because even when Riverside Park was kind of in its worst way, most neglected, it seemed as though the dog walkers always loved the park.
But even though the city did neglect the park back then, it still had the natural, pristine feel of it. There wasn't too many changes to it.
No, and in fact, a few years later, when we asked Mike Nadeau to come and look at the landscape to see if he had suggestions about managing stormwater on site, he was pretty shocked that some of the areas were so neglected that it was undisturbed soil and invasive plants didn't really take hold in that area. And those areas were 80 to 90% still native plants.
But even back then we had, the park had the regular visitors. They would come for lunch.
City employees, a lot of them.
A lot of city employees. They would pull up next to the old bathhouse right on the railroad tracks. Yeah. Have their lunch there. So a lot of people were enjoying the park, even though the city was 90% forgot about it.
Well, I think to this day, people don't necessarily know where it is. And some New Londoners, but even people from close communities, Groton or Waterford in particular, so many of them will come like to our festival in September or just kind of stumble on it, and it's like they never knew it was there.
Yeah. But once they get there, they're amazed how nice it is and the views and.
It is. It is amazing. Well, we have some slides, and I have to admit that some of these slides are recycled from 2014, and some of them are newer. So the first one is, where is Riverside Park? Because I'm hoping that everyone who's watching the show live knows where Riverside Park is, but perhaps not.
Well, everybody knows where the Coast Guard Academy is, so it's right next to the academy on the river.
Yeah.
But the question is, how do you get to it?
It took me a few years to figure that out. I had been at Riverside Park probably 50 times before I got beyond the point, if you're in Hodges Square, go up any hill and drive around and you'll find it. I just didn't have a clear concept of where it is.
Well, there really was no signs or anything. I mean, I found it by accident after I moved here in 2006, I think it was. I went exploring in the city and just by chance came across the park.
Yeah, I think and that was part of the problem, that a lot of people didn't know the park, couldn't find the park, didn't know it existed, and when it had kind of a bad reputation that was mostly not deserved.
No.
It was sort of easy for that to spread because of because hardly anyone had actually seen it firsthand, and around the edges was overgrown, so you really had to go into it to see how glorious it is, and going into it seemed scary a little bit.
Well, I was never scared to go into it.
I was never scared.
I wasn't really sure where I was going, but it was an
Yeah.
adventure. The first time was an adventure for me.
So, if you look at the map, you can see it's just along the river, just south of the Coast Guard Academy. But whereas the Coast Guard Academy has very well-marked entrances, you really can't miss it. Riverside Park, all the entrances are off of like small side streets.
Yes.
And there isn't much signage now, but there was less then. And I was just remembering how Adelaide Street used to be one way going downhill.
Downhill to the river.
No, downhill, the one block from Hodges Square, you couldn't go from Hodges Square straight up Adelaide, which was one of the most direct
So
routes.
if you're coming out of the park and you go down, it was one way.
Yeah, and that was, no one could ever figure out why that happened, and that was one of the first acts of Public Works after Mayor Finizio took office, to make that street two-way all the way down to the bottom, and it actually did make a difference.
Yeah, it does make a difference.
So this is more like, not just, you can see Riverside Park and the northernmost green space there, but East New London, had a lot of destruction over the last 50 years, and you can see that the very few green spaces remain. Riverside Park's the biggest. If you go see that little green space between the bridges on the water, that's the state boat launch, and it really isn't green. It's paved.
It is paved, yeah.
But it is the view of, if you want a view of the bridge, you're between the railroad bridge and the car bridge, it is pretty spectacular.
No, it is nice out there. It's a challenge to get out there, though.
Yeah, basically, I was just there, and you have to drive State Pier Road, but State Pier Road isn't very straight. And you keep having to bear left.
And you go through all the industrial sites, and you're just like,
yeah, and then you get there and it's like, is this really something? But it is, and I see some people, when I was there a few days ago, I saw some people just sitting in their cars eating lunch there. So, there's that. There's Fulton Park, which actually was an area that is a lot of fill. If you look at the really old maps of New London, Winthrop Cove was much larger, and that's where the farthest south little trapezoid of land is.
Because the cove used to go up to the old mill, right?
And
they
it's
filled all that
spread.
in.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy that. Well, not exactly creepy, but a couple years ago there was an application before Planning and Zoning Commission that electric company across the street from Fulton Park, that parcel was getting divided into two. And it did get divided, though we haven't seen any, extra construction. But the map that we received showed the old perimeter of where the old roads were and where the cove went, and it was really shocking how much of that was underwater in 1960.
There was a lot of water there. Is that the? I'm looking at the map on the TV. Is that the old mill in between the bridges?
Yeah, and then that last little green space is the old mill, and it isn't colored green, but we were talking before the show, is that whole corridor along State Pier Road on the northeast side, between State Pier Road and Thames River Apartments. That's actually a really nice space. I mean, it's all fenced off, but we have had cleanups inside. They're trying to get rid of underbrush. And there's a lot of wildlife in there, and it could be quite lovely if
from the mill
careful.
down to the
cove.
Down to the cove, yeah.
I think one year we hosted a walk along there and found a gentleman and his daughter, I don't know, in a rowboat rowing up the cove and going up to the mill. So when you see it from the water side, it's really quite nice. You see it from the chain link fence side, and it looks awful. But hopefully someday.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's the state uses the property right across from the mill as a staging area for their construction. So there's a lot of
one other way that you became involved is, when Riverside Park was threatened with being sold, the Park and Rec Commission was asked to do a study on what potential uses could be for the park, and also I think what the loss would be if it were sold. And you were one of the named consultants on this report. And
that all started with I think it was an article in the day paper and I was reading the comments, and someone wrote in, well, if we keep it, what are we going to do with it? Which got me thinking, it's like, well, what are we going to do with it?
And
So that's how that report came to be.
And the reason I think about it now is that it didn't just include Riverside Park. It was looking at a lot of different green spaces and potential green spaces in East New London. And Riverside Park was the natural area among that.
That was the largest, yeah.
But, Fulton Park
But we were
was
trying
included.
to connect. There's 4 different locations that we were trying to connect up in that area.
And I don't know if anyone would see it if I held up the 4 different locations, but they are similar to the ones we just saw on screen. And in fact, the Reconnect study that was done in 2010, I think, it also came to the conclusion that we have these green spaces and they don't connect with each other very well. And not only don't they connect with each other very well, but the walk from one to the other is really pretty unpleasant. I mean, it isn't just that it's not a park.
Yeah, that report was basically the nature park, which would be Riverside Park, and then the recreation areas around it. Because the Crystal Avenue Apartments, they have a beautiful basketball court, but unfortunately it just wasn't taken care of. It was just sitting there.
Yeah, that's true. And well, the way that whole property is laid out was unfortunate in hindsight, because the basketball court is up probably about 30 steps from the
it's higher.
residence. It's very
It's almost near the transfer station.
Yeah.
Up there.
It's very close to where
Yeah.
the wood chipping happens.
Exactly.
So I don't think it's ever been utilized.
But we
to
had
its full
the
potential.
Winthrop Magnet School,
Oh yeah,
Riverside Park, Fulton Park, and the basketball court at Crystal Avenue.
yeah, and actually, we could add, the grounds from the old mill, and
Yeah.
that State Pier Road strip if we ever wanted to really try to connect it. And some of that, there's still the potential there. So here is an aerial view of Riverside Park. And I kept this in, not just to show the boundary, but to show how this is a really shaded area next to the coast, which is not common.
No. Yeah, during the whole campaign to save the park, a lot of people told me, well, you can just go to other parks for nature. I said, but this is right on the water. Where else do we have that?
Yeah, we don't. And just even in general on the Connecticut coast, there, when the Sandy Hook Playscape was put in that place, they were building these playscapes along shoreline areas.
Yeah.
And this was like the only one of 26 that was a shoreline area with trees.
Yeah.
So, beaches.
And trees in New London is something we need to work on.
Yeah, we have had Maggie Redfern on the show, who was a big tree advocate in town. So hopefully, and I'm keeping these maps are in. They were part of the Reconnect study that was done, I think, in 2010. So even before the park was threatened, there was some attention being made to it because.
Right.
And Hodges Square as well, because it suddenly just dawned on several of us that you have the Coast Guard Academy and Connecticut College in the north end of town, and the students really don't support the downtown business as much because it almost feels like a different city.
Yeah.
So people started looking at this area as early as December 2009, and some of the studying went on all through 2010 and into 2011. So this is interesting because it shows the elevation that Riverside Park is steep.
It is steep, yes.
And it's kind of one of its, a terrific thing. We'll have some photographs that maybe show, the view down the slope, but it also kind of shows that it's not really appropriate for any kind of large-scale development.
It really isn't, because of how steep it is, and also I'm looking at the map, and it's amazing how many roads are going through the park.
And I think when I said that, it's kind of scary when you enter the park, I think that all those roads do kind of make it difficult that people enter the park and they don't really know how to get where they're supposed to be. There isn't any hierarchy of roads. I think we do have an old, Riverside Park Conservancy has a website. It was maintained better over its first few years than it has been recently, but there are a lot of old newspaper articles, and I think there's a very old clipping from like the 1920s or 30s that City Council was setting the rate for people who wanted to camp overnight at Riverside Park. And I think it was something like 25 or 50 cents a night. And I heard the theory that some of those funny loops are because there were like campsites along them.
Well, does that map show where the park ranger's cabin was?
Not exactly,
see a
but
square
I'm
there,
thinking
but
it was along Stanners Street. I mean,
Well, when you first enter the park on that road, if you go up.
I'm thinking it's at that point on the left side where the green and yellow kind of meet. But no, that pad doesn't seem to be on it, and you can still see it.
Yeah.
Maybe this one will. This one is slope. So it isn't like the total elevation, but it also shows how hilly it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but that ranger station, I don't know whatever happened to it, but you can still see where it was if you
Part of the
drive along
foundation's still
Standish
there.
Street. And I think it is probably kind of where the road into the park and Stanners are kind of close together, and it's between. And yeah, and here's one more picture, and this kind of just shows the roads and really what a mess the roads are. And one of the problems is that the main road goes between where the playscape and the basketball court and the picnic area are. So there's the potential of having cars going through the very middle of a social area.
Yeah.
And I kept this in just because it was one of the possible options for fixing the road system, making one road along from the entrance and going behind the basketball court, going around the bottom between the upper bathroom and Winthrop School.
For vehicles, and then they would keep some of the roads for pedestrians only.
Right, and maybe just have, bollards or something that emergency vehicles could get through as well.
Right.
But the smaller roads would be for pedestrians or bicycles or whatever. And I think it would make it a friendlier natural park.
Yeah.
And, it still can happen.
Plus, I like the idea of people getting out of their cars and walking the park.
Yeah, and it's an interesting park too because it seems to have different rooms. It isn't just one open space. It's got different areas that have different feels to them.
Yeah, because you can come in from past Winthrop School at the top, where the restrooms are, and that's a whole different area than from down to the bottom.
And I guess
you can't see really can't see the whole park from there, so you have to explore.
Yeah, there really isn't any place where you can see the whole park, I don't think, because it's.
Not really. I mean, if you stand right, the ledge right behind the restrooms upstairs, up at the top.
Yeah, close.
Yeah.
Maybe not the very entrance, but pretty much everything else. But and I guess we can mention, but we have a picture of the new sidewalk somewhere coming up. But there, since Winthrop School opened in January of 2012, the students and the teachers do use the park, and it was nice to see that a sidewalk has been built there, so that the kids don't have to walk in the street. However, it would be nice to have a showier pedestrian entrance into the future.
Well, that was the plan to have. I don't know if it was showy, but it was more pedestrian-friendly entrance from the school down into the park.
Yeah. Well, really, if you think about it, I mean, you said your goal is to get people out of their cars, and that's true. But the fact is, to enter the park before they had the sidewalk, there was no way to enter it except by walking in the street or driving in. There was no pedestrian entrance, which is really kind of odd if you think about it. But yeah, so the next bunch of slides I have is just kind of some things it's used. I mean, here's some of the natural stuff, all kinds of fungi and native plants, lichens, and I don't know if people really like it or not, but the bathroom that's up higher, they got that our group renovated. But
did you do that on purpose?
Yes, we chose.
Talk about lichens, and then if they like it.
Oh no, not that. That part was unintentional.
Oh, okay.
But the color of the bathroom there was intended to match the lichens on the rocks. I don't know if we got it or if it's a near miss, but I think we flaked off a little bit of lichen to match the color at Home Depot.
Well, I think it did your job.
Yeah. And this isn't the old view from the school down to the water in winter. You can see the remnants of the old staircase, which was very washed out and eroded. But I really just love this picture because, I don't know, you can see everything. There are rocks, there are trees, there's water, there's,
Now the plan was to have the main entrance for best pedestrians right in that shot, and then you would be able to look right down to the river.
And I think that was a traditional entrance to the park, because when we renovated the bathroom and had to put a safety box on it to have a key for the fire department to get in, one thing they required was, they asked me, what's the address of the park? So I don't know what the address of the park is. You can enter it from Adelaide, but if you look on Vision Appraisal, there's no address there. I called the police and I called the fire marshal, and the official address, it turned out, is the end of it's a number 80-something Grove Street.
Well, come to find out, that was the main entrance to the park from Grove Street.
Way back historically, although we see old photos of a lot of the fountain that was near Adelaide Street and a lot of people congregating there. The address was Grove.
Yeah.
So maybe someday, none of the work that's been done by the city so far has negated the possibility for future improvements. And I think that's important.
It's just a shame that we have the plan.
We do.
The city spent quite a bit of money on the plan.
$124,000, I think.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention any figures, but.
Oh, sorry.
It's just a shame we're not following the plan now.
And, and I'm not going to show it, but I did bring my copy of the plan because it was approved by Planning and Zoning Commission in September of 2015. And it would have to be somewhat revised because, the hope had been that stairway would become part of Winthrop School and be full of outdoor classrooms, and it was a beautiful, elaborate plan, but the state declined to pay for it. So, but there are some pieces of it that I think.
Well, we were trying
at
the last minute. We were trying to tie. When I say we, I mean the city.
The city.
The city was trying to tie it into the Winthrop School project.
Yeah.
And then the state just made the decision.
I really think that it's unfortunate in a way that the window of time when the park was threatened was when the Winthrop School construction was going on. And I do think that one of the reasons why the state declined to approve that plan was that it was sort of a retroactive thing. If the original plan for Winthrop School had said, it has these outdoor classrooms and this handicapped ramp, and then I think it likely would have been approved. But the first set of plans didn't mention Riverside Park because had the park been sold, we certainly didn't want the school to not get built.
Right, because we were going through the referendum and everything, the recounts.
Yeah, so the timing was really exactly when Winthrop was in process. It was frustrating for me because I was on the Board of Education, and although I had been to cleanups at Riverside Park in past years and I liked the park, it was actually my being on the Board of Ed that got me so involved in this, because I thought, Winthrop School was being promoted as a science magnet school, and because it was a magnet school, we had to attract families from out of district to come to the school, and the park, I thought, was a great draw. And to get rid of that asset before even opening the school, I thought, I even told a friend of mine, who wasn't so sure about keeping the park, if you're not going to vote to keep the park, don't vote for me to be on the Board of Ed. Because it would have been really heartbreaking to try to figure out how to fill that gap in the curriculum and still make that school an attractive option for out-of-district parents.
Well, you were correct in thinking that, because it is a draw for the school, and I think the children from the school, they use the park quite a bit.
And you know, Winthrop has an extended day, and a lot of the specials that are offered, you know, in the early, you know, in the late afternoon are utilize the park. I know that the rec department has had like classes in orienteering, and other organizations like Denison Pequot Seapost have also done nature-related activities. So it's part of the school day, but it's also part of the extended day, even
Sure.
more so that it's a resource. So I have a few pictures that I think I'll just go through pretty quickly. These are from the old, many of them from the art jams that took place in 2012. Planned largely by New London Landmarks in conjunction with the City of New London. You know, there was painting, there was dance and parades, there was drama. I guess this also was part of the dance or the drama. And I think that's really where we got the idea to start inviting artists to the park to paint, because a lot of, you know, people came to the park to do art type things. And then we also connected with students to help plant this area. This was a project with the Drop-In Learning Center, and I think it was one of the first grants we ever got. It was really
That's the entrance,
small.
correct?
The entrance, and this is what it looked like then, and this is what a part of it looked like last summer. So those plants that those students planted, I think it was probably in summer of 2012.
Is that along the wall
Yeah.
on Crystal Avenue?
Yeah. Yeah, it's right in this
yeah.
area near the wall that these plants have grown up.
It's funny because that's where we had one of our meetings with, I guess was Counselor Passero at the time,
Oh, yeah. I had photos
trying to
of
save
that.
the park.
That's true, and when I was going through all my photos, we could have made this a whole like slideshow that we did nothing else, because from some periods of time, I have a lot of photos, and there were a couple of times that area was a meeting place.
Yeah.
It was a meeting place. Councilor Passero, I think it was before the referendum, had a get together there, and you know, the mayor, when he was a councilor, was a huge advocate for keeping the park, and then also afterwards, well, we had that funny period of time between when the contract might have been, I don't know, that there was another meeting there that newly elected Mayor-elect Venezio also had something in that area at that time, and it is kind of the gateway to the park.
It's a gateway. The sign's there, the big, nice green sign for Riverside Park.
So yeah, and so here are just other cleanups. We've had college students there. We've had Coast Guard cadets there. We've had groups from church groups, and you know, the park is really great.
Who took these photos? They're nice.
I don't know. I guess I took most of these.
On your phone?
Some of them I had a camera.
Okay.
I think the phone ones aren't quite as good. And then, you know, so, you know, thinking about the Riverside Park Conservancy activities, you know, one of the first things we did was renovate the restroom, which took a few years, but it's still pretty decent, you know.
It was a lot of work. New roof on it. All new, the interior is all brand new.
Yeah, I didn't happen to bring any interior pictures, but I know that there was a little bit of controversy about the fixtures, because we have really nice water-saving porcelain fixtures in there. And there was a discussion about whether we should get stainless steel fixtures because they last and they're vandal-proof. But you know, maybe I should knock on wood, but since that restroom has never been vandalized.
No.
Since it's been renovated, before, it was in terrible condition, really awful condition.
I think people recognize that there was a lot of work put into that, and I think they respect it.
I think so too.
If you have a piece of property that you're not taking care of, I think it invites more vandalism.
Yeah, and that, I think, we painted the floor. It actually
We did the
looks nice.
floors, yeah, we painted the outside, new roof,
Yeah,
new
we
fixtures.
changed the colors. I mean, not that I have
New
anything
ceiling
against our, on one side, the men's side has all
Yeah.
wood ceiling, because that one had been
ripped out or
ripped
something.
down,
Yeah.
or it had gotten water damaged. The sheetrock was all bad. But yeah, and everything was water saving. And I have to really be thankful that since we started, Community Foundation and the Veolia Foundation and Palmer Fund, and the city through community development block grants have been good about giving us grants to allow us to do some of this
Yeah.
stuff. So the other
Plus,
slide.
we have a water fountain there. Don't forget the water
Oh
fountain.
yeah, there is a water fountain there.
For humans and pets.
Yes, that's true, and I should have put a picture of that, because that comes is right next to the that bathroom.
Yeah.
So we've had events at the park, and there will become a time when I have to give up this computer, and we'll talk about
Now,
this
see
year's
that
calendar.
canopy there?
Yes,
That's a challenge to get up every year.
it is.
So just take a second to enjoy it.
It is. And, one year we didn't take it down. I think we just carried it across, and it covered Lou Struthers' truck all year.
But it takes like 10 people to put it up.
Yeah, it takes a
Yeah.
lot of people to put
They
it
have
up.
to be on the same page too.
Yeah, it's
You
not
gotta
an easy
Gotta
up.
lift all at once.
But I'll tell you, it's nice to have it there.
Yeah.
And this year, the festival is scheduled for September 15th.
September 15th, Saturday, yes.
And we have plein air painters. This is from a few years ago. One of the painters,
That's nice.
who, I don't think this was a photo I took. I think it might have even been in the day, or Joan took it. And then Neighbor Day is another event. Actually, that's our next
Neighbor Day is
social event.
Yeah, that's the first one, May 20th, which is a Sunday.
And Neighbor Day is a New London holiday, and
By
It's-
ordinance.
by ordinance, yeah. And it's the Sunday before Memorial Day weekend. So it's 8 days before that Memorial Day Monday.
Right.
And it's been held at Riverside Park since its second year. I think one year kind of got skipped, but it was a big deal for quite a few years. I think when Darryl Finizio was mayor, and then it kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
And we brought it back last year as just a kind of a low-key event. The former mayor does contribute to it. I think he buys the pizza. And it's just a family day to come to the park and enjoy it.
Yeah, it looks like you had good weather.
We did have good weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor Lindsey, you work
I had to
on the
work.
weekends.
Yeah.
But we're doing it again this year on the 20th of May, and we hope people will come. We'll have flyers and stuff out soon.
What time is that?
I believe it's 10 to
10
1,
to 1,
or
yeah.
11 to 2 maybe. You know what? I'm not sure. We'll check the calendar. I have it.
Come all day, enjoy the park.
And then this is just people, enjoying the playscape. And I don't remember which event this was at, but it's much used. This is not Riverside Park.
This is the line of people trying to get into Riverside Park.
We wish.
We are full capacity that day.
Since about 2012, Riverside Park Conservancy has sponsored walks in little-known open spaces in New London. And the first walk in 2012 was in Riverside Park, and we did a Fulton Park one, Fulton Park to the Old Mill. We did one in Bates Woods. We actually did Mitchell Woods one year, And last year, we did part of the Arboretum, the Bowleswood Natural Area.
Oh, okay.
And this is from that, Maggie Redfern, who's the assistant
But
director.
that's not part of the Connecticut Trails, is it? Week?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is. Okay.
So, and we've co-sponsored with whoever is on site. So this year, we are going to collaborate again with Connecticut College Arboretum and go to the Goodwin Natural Area, which is the part of the Arboretum that's north of Gallows Lane, that you enter near where the old Thames Science Center was,
Oh, okay.
and where the parking lot is. And Maggie Redfern is also going to be leading it. She has done tree walks when we have our Down by the Riverside Festival. And last year, that Arboretum walk, I mean, this was only about a third of the crowd. It was
Yeah,
really
it's
a
like
big
a
group.
nice crowd.
So Connecticut, of all the states in the United States, has most Connecticut Trails Day most U.S. Trails Day events.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm just going to quickly go through like different activities. Basketball, the courts are really used a lot, and you know, can you imagine basketball courts with this kind of view? It's just amazing. Oh yeah, and you probably recognize those dogs.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point that even when a lot of people didn't go to Riverside Park, the dog owners always loved it. And of course, it's good for, this was from one of the Down by the Riverside. We had skateboards and kids with helmets going down the hills and sledding. You know, the terrain is just fantastic. And this is a shot of the community garden, and that's been in existence, I think it's starting its 5th year now. And I just want to make a pitch for it. It's across the street from Riverside Park. It isn't actually in the park, but it's near the entrance on Adelaide. And
Yeah, I just want to back up because when you
Sure.
say across the street, it's really on the same side as the entrance of the Riverside.
That's true.
Yeah.
And in fact, when this community garden was started, we really made an effort to have it look like part of the gateway to Riverside Park. You know, unlike some of the community gardens in town that have like 6-foot chain link fences.
Yeah.
And I'm not criticizing that, they're in different kinds of places, but we were very conscious that it had to be an ornamental location because it was the gateway to the park. And we currently have, I was asked today, I don't remember if it's 48 or 52 beds. Some of them are dedicated to being used by youth groups in the city, but we still do have some beds available for people to rent. It's all organic.
You have water there, water
We
supply.
have water, we can see in the front, that's our water faucet. And we actually got a grant and we're looking into seeing if we can put in drip or irrigation this year. So we'll see.
Yeah.
It's not a promise, but we are looking into that. Along the edge, there are some fruit trees that are too young to be giving too much fruit now, but in the long run, they will be. Along the fence over to the left of where that picture is, there are raspberries and strawberries, and there are some fruit trees outside of the fence and a picnic table.
That's nice.
So it kind of, you know, expands the park-like area without actually being within the park. And then I'm going to go very quickly through some Riverside Park paintings.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's not, because, you know, artists came to Riverside Park for our festival. They've been coming for about 5 years now.
Yeah.
And most of them don't live in New London. There might be 3 artists who come who live in New London. So most of them have never had been to Riverside Park beforehand. But as you see, you know, the landscapes, there's water views, there are tree views, there are rock views, there are some like industrial views, like of the railroad tracks. And they,
Sure.
So, I mean, it's really great to see the artists having just a fresh eye on something that we take for granted. And last year we had the paintings displayed at the Gard Arts Center for about a month, and then many of them moved to the New London Main Street office. So I'm not quite sure what we're going to be doing this year, but
I like that. That really tells the story of Riverside Park. It's the playscape, but look at the nature all around
and it might be available for sale.
What?
The painting.
Oh.
Have you, we do if
I
a
thought you were
person.
trying to tell me something.
No, not the park, the painting. Now, we do on our riversideparkconservancy.org website have an online gallery where you can see what the paintings from this past year look like and some of the previous years. And if you went through the gallery and were
buy 'em all.
interested in buying one of the paintings,
Let's
you could
buy them all and
contact
hang
us.
them in City Council chamber.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Oh, no, we have 5 minutes, gosh. Okay, these are old views. By the way, the stones from around the perimeter of that fountain are still in the ground.
Really?
There is a circle about 24 feet in diameter. Here's some old views. Oh, and this is just an old ad that mentions what a big viewing spot this was for the Yale-Harvard Regatta for a long time, and that I think is on June 9th.
That's the
This
ad for the
year.
Studebaker.
Yeah.
How much? Guess how much that cost? That Studebaker there.
You know, my parents bought a DeSoto in 1957 for about $2,000 or $3,000, so I'm
It's,
guessing it might be something
I
like
think the ad
that.
said $2,358.
I don't know. I'd love to get classic cars to the park for that. Okay, and this is just recent stuff that's happened. We mentioned the sidewalk was put in, contracted by Public Works after the City Council allocated funding for it. And I happened to be in the park the day that it was getting poured. You can see in the way back of the picture the cement mixer. And some work has been done around the playscape as well. There's a ramp now that you can get a wheelchair across there. And they've done some erosion control and drainage improvements. And this picture, this used to be a stand of knotweed where the knotweed was about 10 feet tall.
Oh.
And for the last 2 years, we've been cutting it. And it's one of the sites where we're going to be planting native plants. It's up near the Coast Guard fence along the water, along the railroad tracks. And this is just our cleanup days.
Cleanup days.
We'll have them on our website and on our Facebook page as well, but the first one is April 7th. And I think that's going to be a community garden day as well. And April 14th, we have some volunteers from a local orthodontics group that have been coming for several years. And
These all Saturdays?
they're all Saturdays. And I didn't put times because I think that when we get into
They're
the middle of
clean-
summer, we make them earlier in the morning so we don't.
Cleanup and planting day.
Yeah, and all of those days, maybe the 7th won't be that much planting, but I think all the other ones will be. There is some trash there at the end. And then Neighbor Day, 10 to 1 in the amphitheater. The Connecticut Trails Walk, Saturday, June 2nd. And then the festival is the 15th.
The big festival. Look, 8th annual.
8th annual, isn't
Yeah.
that great? And this is just our website, and if you wanted to get in touch with us. And I will let this laptop go. And I don't know, what did we not talk about? Actually, this is one thing, we only have a few minutes, but since we talked about the cleanup days, one of the challenges with the park, because it's sort of out of the way, is dumping, and trash. So we really, really do need help with cleaning things up. So if you have a group that wants to help, let us know. You can get in touch with me or Lindsey. How else can we encourage people to get involved?
Well, I think once they visit the park, they'll be inspired to maintain it because it's a beautiful park.
It is a beautiful
Yeah.
park.
And if they have a family or something, go there for a picnic or barbecue. Just enjoy the day.
Oh yeah, there are grills in several
Grills all over the
areas.
place, restrooms, basketball court, playscape.
Yeah,
everything you
and view
need
of the
to-
water and some of the things. And I guess we should mention, 1 minute, that the City Council also approved the building of a pavilion on a pad where there was a pavilion in the past.
There was a pavilion. The city took it down a few
in
years
about
back.
2008 or 9, we
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And the one is going back up again, and I'm hoping soon. And I think they're going to build a small playground across from it.
Across
so
from the
that,
new pavilion.
yeah, so that parents can watch their kids play. So whatever you do, come to the park.
Just enjoy the park, whatever you do.
Yeah, and you might bump into one of us, and really, we do recommend people come to do cleanups, come to the events. Neighbor Day isn't that far in the future, and our board meetings are second Thursday.
Thursdays.
We just changed it. It's 7 p.m. at the Senior Center.
Wednesdays, 7 p.m.
Wednesday. Okay.
No, Thursday.
Thursday. So
Well,
you're
yeah,
confused.
you get confused.
Yeah, I'm messing you up now. So, good night, everyone. We'll see you next week. Next week, Constance Christophic will be on the show talking about This Old House and other New London landmarks programs, including the one on April 10th about urban renewal and the homes lost in Winthrop Cove, which is the Riverside neighborhood.
Yeah, it is.
So we'll see you then.